Amadeus Musumali, thanks so much for being here in Business Indaba. We're here in your lovely study.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Let's get started. Starting with maybe telling us a bit more about yourself, where you were born and when you were born, and a bit about your family background.
Okay. My name is Amadeus Musumali. I am 33 years old. Was born in 1985 in a lovely, blessed little place called Chikankata.
Chikankata.
Southern province of Zambia. Yeah. I'm single, but I have a very large extended family, and I'm a marketer.
You're a marketer.
Yes, sir.
And what brought your family to Chikankata?
The fact that UTH was on strike that day.
Oh wow. That's quite the story.
Oh yeah, it was quite a distance. But I'm here, so clearly everything worked out.
And your father is an economist?
Yes, he's got a PhD in economics.
And your mother was a nurse, right?
Yes, she was a nurse. Now she's a full-time homemaker.
Nice. Tell me a bit more about your education. Primary school, secondary school, tertiary.
Wow, this is like my CV now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing much to tell. It's really just, I think let's talk about what really matters in this case. So my tertiary education. I did most of my primary and secondary schooling here in Zambia, and I then went to an Australian university called Monash. That's where I did a bachelor's in management and marketing. And over the last couple of years, I also did and completed and got my master's in global marketing from the University of Liverpool. But I found that when it comes to marketing, your academic qualifications matter very little in terms of your ability to actually conceptualize, design, and implement marketing campaigns.
Okay. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, you see, most marketing, and no offense, I loved my courses. I loved the degree courses. They were very interesting. What we discussed was very interesting, but it's all very academic, and it's all very biased towards one particular type of marketing, which is very much built around branding, not brands. Brands are great, and of course everybody in marketing loves brands, but there's a branding approach that is taught in most university environments, and this really comes out of the advertising and marketing agencies of the 1950s and 60s in the Western world, mostly in the United States. And this type of marketing was really evolved for large corporations.
Right.
So we're talking about international giants, conglomerates that have multi-billion-dollar marketing budgets that can afford to spend millions and millions of dollars in a particular area or country just on one kind of advertising. And what I found when I started working was that a lot of the things that I'd been taught and that I had believed in, almost like an article of faith, didn't really scale down to SMEs and single entrepreneurs. So
would you say that also that's just for SMEs, but maybe it also doesn't work for the Zambian economy as a whole?
Okay, now that's a very interesting question. I think a lot of the theories and concepts that are taught in universities throughout the world, they have merit. It's not like they came from nowhere, but they have merit for large scale enterprise. They have merit for huge corporations with huge marketing budgets. It is really tricky to scale that down to an SME. What I found, for example, with a lot of the places I worked in after college, was that a lot of the business owners, the actual entrepreneurs, so people who had started businesses in competitive industries, really didn't do any marketing in the way that I knew it. In fact, most of them were concentrating on direct sales, because that's how they had come up through. That's where they see the results. They know if they hire X amount of salespeople, they can get Y amount of revenue if the salespeople are any good. So yes, it doesn't. To me, it didn't scale down, and that was a huge pain point for me because I was really passionate about this. I believed in it, and then, I went out into the world and found that like none of the stuff seemed to work. For the Zambian context, I'd say probably structurally yes, a lot of this doesn't work or is very challenging because of the degree of the development of the economy. So you don't have a lot of indigenous businesses that have multi-million-dollar marketing budgets that can afford to spend a couple of $1,000,000 doing X or doing Y,
There's only a handful.
If at all, or at best, at best. And I really think that is sad because I've learned a lot about marketing subsequently, and that's kind of the start of my journey, that frustration of, okay, this stuff doesn't seem to work. How do we get it working?
Also, when you switch on the television, there's a form of marketing going on, right? Adverts. And a lot of these adverts, they have a certain structure in Zambia. There's always a jingle, and then there's a story being told, probably in vernacular. I think it has worked up until a certain extent, but now people want to see something different. Would you agree with me?
Yes and no. I think when you're talking about advertising, and this is generally speaking in Zambia, in my opinion, we have TV advertising, we have radio advertising, and we have print.
Right.
So print media, papers, you can put outdoor advertising under that if you want, or you can leave
There's
it
events
separately.
as well, right?
And there's events marketing, yeah, so a few people are doing events marketing. I think everything is very new and it's a nascent industry, it's a nascent market. And we're slowly starting to understand how to apply a lot of these things to our environment, our structure, as you said, our context. And it's definitely getting better. If I compare the TV adverts I used to see as a kid in the 90s and what we have now, it's worlds apart.
Yeah.
Things have gotten so much better. And also just, as I've met people, we have some truly passionate, dedicated and skilled people working in this industry now. At the same time, when you're talking about the specific format of, there's a jingle, there's a story, when it comes down to it, all good marketing is storytelling. You're telling a story. Why? Because human beings are programmed for stories.
Right.
If you want to teach a person something, if you want somebody to remember something, tell them a story. And this is very important because marketing communication is all about persuasion. I send out marketing communications and messages because I want to persuade people to buy my product, use my service, subscribe to my YouTube channel, to my Facebook page, whatever. Persuasion is not necessarily what you tell people. It is what they remember after you've told them. And people tend to remember stories the best.
Right.
Because that is how in the olden days and very far in our evolution, we have learned to communicate. That is how we have shared information.
Mouth to mouth, or however you want to call
Storytelling,
it.
in the family, around the fireplace. It's really the original viral post. So the idea of using stories, telling people stories around products, is an ancient one, and it works very, very well. The issue I have is that often, if you're talking about the Zambian context, we want people, or we want to tell people too many stories at once. So we don't have focus. There's a lack of clarity. It's the typical local business. We sell beer, mattresses, Vaseline, and batteries. We sell everything. And if you ask us, well, I'm also a contractor. I'll build you a house. I will do your accounting. I can do monitoring and evaluation for your NGO project. And oh, by the way, I'm also a tour guide.
Do you need a car?
Do you need a car? Yeah. So our messages get diluted.
Mm.
And I think the issue that you observe around storytelling is that storytelling is structured. There's structures to it. You know, there's deep ingrained patterns in every human society that cut across all cultural boundaries and history that people all over the world respond to. So a lot of times we find that when people try to tell stories through their advertising here, they don't follow the structure. The cycle breaks down at one point or another, or they are trying to tell too many stories at the same time.
Interesting. So let's take a few steps back. When did you realize that you had a passion for for marketing?
Wow, I wish I had something very profound to say here, and that it was something that I had always wanted to do.
Well, you first off started in sales.
I did start in sales, but the story starts before this. So I kind of got interested in marketing during my last 2 years in secondary school. We were doing a bunch of business courses, and I really thought the marketing aspect of it was interesting. And I liked it, completely forgot about it, because that wasn't what I wanted to do at that point. Then I went to university, and I didn't even enroll for marketing originally.
Wow.
I did management, and I wanted to do communications, which of course it's related, but my passion, my interest at the time was more like, okay, I'm going to get this management part, I'm going to combine this with the communication part, and then I'm going to work for the UN and save the world. Clearly that didn't happen. The funny thing is I went through like an entire basic year of uni, and then got told by university that I couldn't, because we had a double major system where you could major in 2 different fields at the same time, and they neglected to tell me that you couldn't major in 2 fields from different faculties. So, you know, I'd signed up for the comms courses, I was excited about it, you know. I also noticed that was a faculty where all the pretty girls were. So I was good to go.
You were in your element.
I was in my element. All of 19 years old, you know, still had hair. Life was good. And, you know, then there was a shocker like, oh, by the way, you can't actually do this. I'm like, wow, gosh, what am I going to do now, you know? And there were really only 2 choices. One was accounting, and I wasn't going to do that to myself. No offense to all the accountants out there, but no. So yeah, marketing it was, and I'm glad that I made that decision. But yes, so when I actually started working, I didn't work in marketing. There's a story behind it, there's other reasons for that as well, but I actually started out not even in sales, but in finance. So I was a credit controller when I started working. But interestingly enough, the approaches, the mindset, and even the workday of a credit controller is actually very similar to that of a salesperson. You are always engaging people, you're always calling people up, and you're asking for an action. And that action in the case of a credit controller is pay your bills. In the case of a salesperson it's buy this. I would even say that after doing credit control, probably the selling part is easier, because it's a lot easier to sell people something they want than it is to get them to pay for it once they've gotten it. But yeah, I started off in sales. I loved it, and I went into different sectors, mostly telecoms kind of sale, B2B, B2C, a little bit of everything. And I hit a wall in my career. I was in a certain job in an environment that wasn't right for me. I didn't enjoy my work anymore. It was a bad fit all around. And I also realized that probably I wasn't cut out for the corporate kind of thing myself. But those were all just by the ways. What really frustrated me was that I realized that I typically go and drink Coca-Cola. Does this work To an extent, but the cost and the time that you spend doing this is incredible. So we're literally talking about millions of dollars spent over several years.
And we've already established that in the Zambian economy, there's very few companies
who have that kind of money.
Right.
So it's very wasteful, it's very inefficient, and you don't get to see results in a reasonable time frame. So that was off the table. When I discovered copywriting, I mean, a lot of copywriting, or the majority that is produced by agencies throughout the world and in-house, is focused on this branding kind of approach. It's really just another way to reach people with an intrusive advert for product X or service Y. I ended up discovering something called direct response marketing or direct response copywriting. And direct response copywriting completely changes the entire frame of the situation. So instead of dealing with, let me put it this way. Instead of allowing or focusing on creating a position for yourself in the customer's mind over years and years and years, what direct response copywriters realize is that we have one chance to reach the customer. And I want to reach the customer now.
Mm-hmm.
If they see our advert and they don't take action, and that action could be anything. It could be purchasing your good. It could be stepping forward and identifying themselves. It could be going to a store to buy a good. It could be calling you. If I don't present you with my pitch, offer you a clear, simple, valuable offer, and give you a call to action, a next step, then I've wasted my budget. Because if I'm an SME and I have a limited marketing budget and I run an advert in a paper, which is very expensive in the Zambian context, we can talk about that later, I have one shot to reach my target audience. And not only do I have one shot to reach them, I also need that advert to create a return on investment. I need to make my money back. At the very least, I need to break even.
The next step.
And the next step, that is what it's about. You see, the branding-based approach leaves you with some vague idea of what you should do. It doesn't tell you what you should do. It just says, drink this. Or, it shows you ridiculously good-looking people in very expensive clothing in a beautiful location, probably Italy or Paris or somewhere, or on a yacht. And then
it tells a story.
It tells a story. It does tell a story. And then it just shows you the picture of a perfume. But it doesn't really tell you what you should do next. It has shown you that, if you wear this perfume, you too might be a beautiful person on a yacht in the Mediterranean, Which, who doesn't want to be a beautiful person on the yacht in the Mediterranean with other beautiful people? But that's not the point. The point is it just leaves you with a vague idea of what you can do to attain what they've just shown you. Direct response marketing shows you, it tells you the story of what you can attain very clearly and in simple language. And then it gives you the next step, the first thing you can do to attain the thing you want. If that is calling us to start a conversation about our personal shopping service that will make you look like a Hollywood movie star, or if that is buying the product, buying that, perfume that turns you instantly into a beautiful person on a yacht in the Mediterranean. It gives you a clear call to action. It motivates you to take action. And it's in that motivation that direct response marketing differs from branding or the brand base. And when I say brand, I'm not saying that brands are bad, brands are awesome. We're talking about the branding mindset, the brand-based approach to marketing. So that is what makes direct response copy so powerful. It's the fact that you are motivating your audience, your reader, your viewer, your social media follower to take action, and that action should then be the first step in putting money in your pocket.
Back into your pocket.
Back into your pocket, exactly. Back into your pocket. Well, we don't just want them to put the money back into our pocket. We want to have it back in our pocket, and we want some stacks on the table.
Could you maybe elaborate on branding, what it is, in your own words?
Yes, please. To me, branding, a brand is the emotion, the ideas, and the relationship that people have towards a product, a service, a business, or a person.
Mm.
It's a symbol. It's a mental shortcut that allows us to make certain decisions quickly. So, cognitively speaking, making decisions is hard. It takes a lot of mental energy and stress to come up with a decision. And the last thing you want to do is never ever make your customers think too much. People are busy. We have all sorts of responsibilities, problems, issues we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm trying to get through the day and feed my family, move forward in life, achieve my best life, the last thing I want to do is think really, really hard about what brand of margarine or what margarine I'm going to buy. And this is where brands become helpful, because brands help us form ideas, relationships, and emotions beforehand, so that when I see that a certain soft drink is made by the Coca-Cola company or by Pepsi, I have a relationship with Coke. I have a relationship with Pepsi. I have ideas, feelings, and experiences with these two brands.
Right.
That makes the decision with the new drink easier for me, because I already have an idea of what sort of products Coca-Cola produces, as an example. So it's a shortcut for making certain decisions. I mean, it's not just with groups of brands. It can be a single brand. I might have dealt with brand X before, and I'm in a situation where I have need of that product or service again. Maybe a friend needs something in category X. And because I have a relationship, I have already done the emotional labor, the mental labor, to say that brand X is pretty good. I can recommend that to you without thinking twice. So that's the power of a brand to me.
How about when the brand becomes synonymous with the product?
Wow, that's the holy grail. That is what you want to happen. That is
Colgate, right?
Yes, Colgate. In Zambia, by the way, just for the international viewers, in Zambia, all toothpaste is called Colgate. So when somebody asks you for Colgate, they're just saying, do you have toothpaste? And we've got a couple of other examples. Or Boom. I think Boom is more popular than Surf now. We've got Saladi, which is cooking oil. So cooking oil is Saladi, which was a brand, I don't know, in the 70s or 80s. At the same time, there was, I think, a brand, I don't know if this was an actual brand or if this was a nickname, but there was a little satchel of milk called a Pamela.
Oh, really?
Yep. So a lot of the people will still, especially, just the normal person on the street, when they're talking about milk, they'll talk about Pamela. So yeah, if you reach that kind of identification where people identify your brand with a product category, you're the king. You're dominating. You've won. You've won the game. I mean, doesn't mean you can stop working, but it means you have won. It's gonna be really, really hard for somebody to come in and unlodge you from that position. Yeah. So that is a brand to me, and I love brands. I think brands are awesome simply because they make buying and selling easier for both parties, right?
I agree.
Branding, on the other hand, I mean, I've talked about it extensively, that look, if you are an SME, if you're a startup, if you're an entrepreneur, especially in Zambia or generally in the African context, when you don't have a lot of money to promote your products and services, when you don't have an extensive network, or an existing brand of which to market your new product and service. I don't think branding is the best use of your limited time, energy, and funds.
Nice. So instead they would go for
Ideally, direct response marketing.
direct response
So
marketing.
that's explaining all the ins and outs of direct response marketing would be another conversation or another 2-3 hour interview in itself. But I think the pertinent point is that there's a structure to direct response marketing. It doesn't matter what the format is. Traditionally a lot of this craft was developed by people working in the direct mail field in the United States. So these were people who were sending adverts to households and to businesses with an advertising message. It could have been a one-page printed ad, could have been an entire sales letter. But the point is that they always gave a focused pitch. So there was always a clear offer that focused on the benefits of the product or service to the potential customers, not features. So we're not talking about, well, it has 4 legs, it gives milk, and it moves. That's a cow. Yes, you've given me the features of a cow. But those are not the benefits of why I would want to own a cow. I might want to own a cow because it gives you milk every day.
Mows your lawn for you.
It mows your lawn for you.
Fertilizer.
It fertilizes it. It gives you little cows. And one day...
Cuteness factor.
And one day it will give you some hamburgers.
Right.
So those are benefits.
Yeah.
You see, we're not talking features. We're talking benefits. Like, what is the value of a feature in the context of my life? We're talking about speaking to emotion. So this is another big thing that direct response marketing does. What you find psychologically, people buy based on emotion and later on rationalize and justify their purchase with logic. Logic, reason in your ad is important, but it's of secondary importance. Reason exists to support emotion. All things being equal, people buy because they want to buy, because at the time there's an emotion that is driving them to buy.
So what you're telling me is that as long as you can create the right emotion, their mind will come up with the logic after having bought it?
Not necessarily. People rationalize purchases or decisions. Generally, as human beings, we rationalize decisions after the fact.
Okay.
I would say that 90% or 95, if not 99% of our decisions are driven by emotion. At some level or the other. When you don't provide enough when you don't provide enough logic, enough reason for people to rationalize after making a decision, you're putting them into something called cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance is that uncomfortable feeling you get after you bought that useless doodah at the checkout counter at the supermarket, and you have no idea why you bought it. You don't need it, it doesn't fit into your home, it's actually frankly quite useless. But at the time, just as you were at that checkout counter, it was an impulse. It was an impulse purchase. You bought that gossip magazine. You don't even like gossip, You bought that overly sweet gum, and you don't even like gum, When that happens and you don't have a good reason, you don't have a logical reason that you can use in your rationalization, you get a feeling of uncomfortableness. You become uncomfortable, you become mentally anxious. And what any good marketer does is, they want to make sure that you experience as little cognitive dissonance as possible. Because if you have too much cognitive dissonance, and you get too uncomfortable, you're not just not going to buy from them again. You might start spreading negative word of mouth, which has a negative impact on my marketing.
Right.
So reduce cognitive dissonance by providing both the emotion. You appeal to both the emotion and the reason. But if you have to choose between any of the two, emotion will always trump reason and logic in a sales message. Of course, that is not how you present it to the customer. because people want to be consistent. This is another psychological principle. As human beings, we have the inborn, hardwired, psychological need. It's not a desire, it's an actual need to be psychologically consistent. This is why rationalization is such a powerful mental tool, and it's such a powerful selling tool, because people want to feel that they are consistent. We want to feel that we are consistent in our decision making. I didn't just change my decision and go against what I was doing previously because I had no reason. I have to tell myself that my decision that seems to go against everything I've done for the last few years was actually part of my established behavior. So this is where you're now going deeper into cognitive dissonance. People want to be consistent. So we need to, while we minimize cognitive dissonance, we're also actually helping people stay consistent in the story of their life. Because remember, this all goes back to stories. We tell ourselves stories about who we are. We call those stories identities, when these stories are shared amongst more than a couple of people.
Right.
Then it becomes an identity. Every person has an identity. We have group identities, but we've also got identities that only exist in our heads, that are based on the context and experience of our lives. That I am this kind of person. I am a quiet person. I am a shy person. I am a gregarious social butterfly. I am the cool person. I am the strong, reliable religious person. These are all stories we tell ourselves. The most powerful marketing happens when your message and the story that the customer is telling themselves inside their own head align. That is the sweet spot, the Goldilocks zone.
So in sales and marketing, it's not just about getting to know your customer and getting to know the product, but there's also a lot of psychological aspects to it as well.
Yes, and this is what a good direct response copywriter thrives on. So we're not just talking about structure, we're not just talking about great headlines or clear call to actions. Those are all important. At the end of the day, you have to understand your target audience. You have to understand what moves them, what motivates them. And you need to understand the underlying psychological triggers and mechanisms that drive people, that drive your market in order to create copy, to create strategies, to create campaigns that meet their needs, their desires and their wants.
Clear.
And a good copywriter will take the time, and sometimes it can take a significant amount of time. You know, clients always think it's hocus pocus. You know, they snip their finger and in 2 hours you've given them the most perfect, bestest copy ever.
I think those are
happen.
people that have watched a lot of Mad Men, maybe.
Yeah, but you see, even Mad Men, yes, I love Mad Men. I thought it was a brilliant series. From the historical point of view, they did try and throw a lot of historical things in there and a lot of the concepts, etc. You're right, it kind of gave a lot of people a very unrealistic view of advertising and marketing. It's kind of like how CSI made everybody think that forensics is some sort of Star Trek super technology-like process when it really, really isn't. Or a lot of the processes and techniques they were talking and showing about in the show were actually limited to very specialized labs, like a handful of labs in the world, or that they were theoretical applications. They don't even exist in the real world. So yes, that is true. I think it's a process. You know, it's think of it like creating a product. You know, anybody who's an entrepreneur who creates a physical product understands that you don't bake a cake in 2 minutes. You know, you don't build a house. If you're a contractor, you're not going to build a house in 1 day. You need to lay a foundation. You need to get your materials ready and mix them together. You need to read your recipe and understand the quantities, like how much sugar, how much spice, how much of chemical X, you know? And it's the same with good copy. You need to do the work, you need to go through it, you need to do your research, really understand your target audience, and even once you've created a piece of communication that you can bring to the customer, you need to test it. Because even based on data-driven copy, if I don't test it out and see how real life human beings respond to it, it might bomb. So testing and optimization after communication are also critical to marketing success.
So, Amadeus, there is always one person in the company that knows all about his products, all about his customers, and that's usually the owner of the company.
Indeed.
So why is it that the owner is never really the right person to do their own copywriting?
That's another great question. What I've often observed is that some very creative, very passionate, and very knowledgeable entrepreneurs and business owners and managers tend to want to write their own advertising, their own communications. And on the surface, that makes complete and utter sense. Look, nobody knows, as you said, a product, service, and market better than the person who deals with it every day, who services customers, who delivers to customers, who sells to customers. Yes, you know your product the best. I, as a copywriter, I'm not going to come in and say you don't know your market. No. I will sit with you. I will interview you. I will tell you that, yes, I'm here to listen to you and to understand, to know what you know about your customers. But the point is that the business owner is not necessarily the best person to communicate what he knows. Look, if you are an amazing entrepreneur, you are so busy running your business, at what point did you have the time to become a good writer? At what point do you have the time to sit down and really think about how to communicate your value proposition in as few words as possible? So I always start off by interviewing the most knowledgeable person in the firm, which is the owner or the frontline employees who actually deal with customers. The reason why you'd want to work with a copywriter is to help you put what the value that you know you provide, the value that you know your goods, your products, your services, your business, your team provides into words.
Right.
It's like dealing with a specialist. You know, if you have a headache and it doesn't go away and then your ears start bleeding, you could just take headache pills. You could take an aspirin or go to the pharmacy.
We're all doctors then.
We're all doctors. Yes, in Africa we're all doctors. But at the same time, I think even the most stubborn person realizes that once you have blood coming out of your ears and your eyes, I need help. I need to go see a doctor. You know? Yeah, sure, you can use WebMD and Google a few things, but at the end of the day, at some point we all call a professional. You know, if there's no water in my house, I'm not gonna go digging around the yard. I'm gonna call a plumber.
Right.
And it's the same thing, specialization. Yes, you know your business the best, and that is great. Let me help you tell the world.
Tweak it.
That's my job.
So you've already sort of told us the step that you're going to interview the owner or the frontline personnel about the products and the customers. Can you maybe tell us a bit more about the steps you take in order to get the right approach for a perfect piece of content?
Sure. Well, the first thing is really that as we engage with a prospective customer, it's really just the first meeting or the first communication is really just about establishing, can I help this person? So it's about getting to know them as a person, understanding what their business is, and what they think their problem is. Based on that, I can normally judge whether I am in the best position to help that person.
Okay.
You know, sometimes I might not have the right skill combination to help them.
What do you do then?
Then I recommend that they find somebody else. If there's somebody that I know and trust and can vouch for who has a particular skill set, I will refer them to them.
Okay.
If I have no idea, I might just give them an idea of, well, maybe the kind of person or what you really need is check for XYZ, right? And at least then they have a starting point of how they can search, probably through the internet, LinkedIn, etc., to find somebody who can help them. Sometimes it's a personality thing. You know, there's a lot of, because because this is such an involved process. You know, I don't anymore do copy for people who don't let me do the strategy. Because strategy, the thinking, and the writing go together.
Hand in hand.
Hand in hand. You know, I will tell you 99% of the cases where somebody has told me, oh, I've got the strategy all worked out and we've done all the customer research and everything is in place, just write copy. Wow. Stories I could tell you. The holes in, you know, what people think is sufficient or adequate is very, very far off the mark. And, you know, some people might take that kind of business to bill and make the money, but I'm unwilling to do that because I'd be ripping you off. I would not provide a true value to you. So I do the strategy and the copy.
Okay.
I think the process is we would then have a more, when and if we decide to work together, we would have a more in-depth conversation and really drill down and diagnose what is your primary number one problem in your sales system. That's what I focus on. Sales systems, sales funnels. What is your main problem? And it, you know, together we might find out that it's actually not what you thought it was originally. We'll look at your data, your customer feedback, and we'll see like, wow, you thought it was A, but actually from the data, feedback, and employee reports, we're actually seeing the problem is B, it's not A. And from there on out, we can work out a plan of action on how to tackle that through copywriting. That's generally my approach to things. I know some people do it differently, but that's how I like to work.
Let's take a few steps back. Previously, you told us of, you know, the more traditional means of advertising through newspaper, TV, etc., etc. Just for the viewers' point of view, or giving them a little bit of a differentiation between this method that you are used to, as opposed to newspaper advert. What is the cost of the traditional method?
Well, in Zambia, traditional advertising outside of radio is very, very expensive.
Okay.
So my information is a few years old, so it's not 100% accurate anymore, but if anything, I believe things have gotten more expensive. So in Zambia, 2 years ago, if you wanted to run a full color advert.
With all the bells and whistles.
With all the bells and whistles. So everything is in color, it's an entire A4 page in the paper. You will pay 30,000 kwacha.
30,000 kwacha.
Yes. You more or less $3,000.
3,000 USD.
So you are essentially, and this is for one insertion, mind you. This is like for running it once on one day.
One day.
So you are paying the equivalent of a second-hand vehicle from Japan for one advert run on one day. That's a lot of money. Not a lot of SMEs can afford that kind of cost in their advertising.
It's a lot of money. And like you said, you're focusing on SMEs.
Yes. So, well, I've also worked with larger companies. But even large companies, you know, they are medium-sized to large companies that can't afford to run very many of these adverts, at least not without a clear indication that there are results coming out of this. And you see, this is a beautiful thing about direct response marketing. It's measurable. You can measure your results. It's very easy to do it if you're using digital channels. It is not as easy but possible to do it when you're using traditional media. But the fact is that because you have a clear call to action, you can structure your call to action in such a way that it traces back to the medium and to the campaign.
Could you give us an example of one such copywriting that you thought was brilliant?
Well, okay. So one good response method, this is, any copywriter who's worth their salt and has done a little bit of reading and learn from the greats will know the story. So there was a very famous copywriter called Gary Halbert in the United States, and he sent out a sales letter, and he was always experimenting, like, how do I get people to respond? Because the first step to selling is for the prospect to step forward, raise their hand, and identify themselves. Then you can start the marketing process with them, right? So there's a lot of things you can do to do that. Coupons are a very simple and popular way, or were a very simple, popular way. Cut this out, clip it, send it in, and you get product X at this reduced, with a discount, right? That was always an easy way to not just motivate people to act, but also then to attribute, because you knew that particular coupon with this code was only published in this publication in a particular area, right? So what Gary did was he said he wanted a maximum response to this particular sales letter. So what he did was he went to his bank and got $2,000 worth of $1 bills.
Okay.
And then he clipped a dollar bill to every sales letter he sent out. And his response rate was through the roof. Number one, people paid attention. Why is there money on this thing? Number two, people went through the offer. It was a great offer. It was extremely well written. And then when the call to action came, they said, you know what, this is really interesting. And also, this guy gave me money. Let me respond.
Nice.
I think that was one of the best stories I've ever heard about that.
Okay, so now you've told us one of your favorite best ones. Could you maybe tell us one that was a bomb and the reason why?
One that was a bomb.
Yeah.
And the reason why. Okay. Trying to think of something that is impactful, that the viewer will remember. One thing that was a bomb and the reason why.
I think it was one by an insurance company.
Insurance company. You have to jog my memory a little bit.
So you told me about this insurance company that ran this advert that was very funny.
Oh, yes. Thank you. No, this one really should have. You see,
It was so bad.
It was so bad that I remember the video clearly. If you had said the Lobola guy or the kettle guy, it would have clicked. But the fact that you mentioned, oh no, this is a perfect example. So there was an ad last year in 2018 that went viral in Africa and I guess throughout the world. It was a really funny ad about a young man, a young European, very blonde, blue-eyed, good-looking guy, going to pay Lobola.
A bridal fee.
A bridal price for his African fiancée, And the whole thing, I mean, you have to watch it. It really is worth watching. It's funny. And the whole thing was really based around accents and his misunderstanding of the tradition. So that when he approached his potential father-in-law, he completely misunderstood what was being asked for. And that was the punchline about the whole thing.
Was it a kettle?
Yes, so the joke is on the fact that I think the guy's supposed to be Swedish and he can't say cattle. And also the girl is from a tribe that also when they pronounce the word kettle, it's not cattle, it's kettle. So both people pronounce it as kettle. And the poor chap had been told that I think he was supposed to bring 50 cows as a bride price for his fiancée. And he ended up bringing 50 kettles, like the electric kettles, and that was the joke. And I thought it was really funny, but something was bugging me when I saw this video because it was all over the place. And then I realized what it was. I couldn't remember who the ad was for. So I thought like, okay, maybe this is just me. I didn't even know what the ad was selling. So I watched it, I figured out the company and I figured out what the product or what their product actually is. And they also don't provide you with introductions to African princesses. What they actually do is they're an insurance company. They provide insurance. But they talked about everything but insurance in the ad, you see? I didn't even remember it. So to me, that was a wasted selling opportunity. A lot of people nowadays in marketing have caught on to the fact that you need to tell stories. Well and good, I love stories. I'm a proponent of storytelling in marketing. Story-driven marketing, story-driven sales. Mwah, wonderful. But this thing of entertaining people, of being funny, it tends to overshadow the actual message. So the worst thing that you can do to yourself, the worst disservice you can do your marketing, is to let humor and entertainment or trying to make a political statement, that's also something we've seen over the last couple of years, overshadow your actual message, which is, I'm selling, buy this. You know, a lot of audiences have gotten accustomed to being entertained in their marketing and in their advertising. And I'm not saying it doesn't necessarily, that it does not work. The problem is that it's such a nuanced and fine thing that it's very, very, very easy to make mistakes. And I think the biggest mistake, for example, in this Lobola example, was that none of the things they taught about in the story had to do with insurance. They had to do with Lobola, they had to do with an intercultural relationship and communication misunderstandings, communication breakdowns, and kettle, you know? If this had been an advert for a kettle, it would have been an amazing advert. You know, everybody would be talking about this kettle. Let me give you an example of somebody who I think gets it right. So we have this video about Lobola that got it completely wrong, in my opinion. Very entertaining, very funny, but like I said, you know, when nobody remembers your company name or what it is you actually do in terms of marketing, it's a waste of money and time. You have failed. There is an example of somebody who I feel did this right, and this is, I think they're called Allstate Insurance. This is another insurance company, and it flows together perfectly. So I think it's Allstate Insurance in the States, has a series of ads, and you need to Google these, they're on YouTube, they're really funny. They're called the Mayhem ads. And they got one of the guys from, do you remember that old crime prison drama, Oz?
No.
It was like, you know, it was like one of these hardcore, like Sons of Anarchy and what before there was Sons of Anarchy. One of those gritty prison dramas. And they got one of the actors from there to play the person. He's the avatar. He's a personification of mayhem. So just of random stuff going wrong. So he's put into all these funny everyday situations where people have their stuff and their property destroyed because of mayhem. Because of just like random accidents, acts of nature, carelessness, etc., you know? And he always plays the role, he's the actor of mayhem, you know? So it's like, oh, I'm a teenage girl, you know, and I'm emotionally distressed because I'm texting while driving, and I just bashed into your car. Well, there's a $2,000 damage, bye-bye, you know? And everything plays towards the fact that life is random, stuff happens, mayhem happens. Get insured with this particular insurance. So you see the story, the call to action. So it's an entertaining story. It's really funny. They're telling us a story. It's entertaining, but there is a clear link between the storyline and the brand. What is you're actually selling, and there's a clear call to action. There's the emotional push to say, well, this could happen to you. Better call Allstate Insurance. You know, and I think they got it right. They got it right. So entertainment and taking a political stance, these are not necessarily bad things in marketing. But if they overshadow your sales message, or if your sales message is not even part of that particular communication, then you're doing it wrong.
Okay. So from what I gather from what you've been telling me, then a good copywriting text has a proper pitch, it lists the benefits. The story that is being told is one that is relatable.
Yes.
And there's a call to action.
Yes, but before the call to action, you make an offer.
An offer.
So this is something that even in the Mayhem video was lacking. There was no, well, the offer was insurance, but there was no clear offer. The clearer the offer to your audience to say, look, we've gone through it, we've told you the story, this is what could happen, or this is what a positive future could look like. Here is what we are offering you to make that happen. And here's the action step you need to take in order to do that. You see, it goes back to don't make them think. The less I have to think about what it is you want me to do, the easier you make it for me to understand the benefits to me. And the clearer and the simpler the first step to action, the more likely you're going to make a sale. Remember, a lot about marketing and sales is just about reducing the friction, lowering the barriers, not to entrance, to action. That's what we want. Awareness and interest need to drive desire and action. Awareness and interest without action is just nothing. It's fluff, it's air, it's hot air. There's nothing in there for you. So a good copywriter will structure things like that. And that is the value. And it's not just text, by the way. You know, copywriters script video ads, so TV spots, radio spots. They can script your webinar. They can anything that requires communication. They can write a powerful speech for you. You know, if you're addressing a gathering, an organization, and you're marketing or you want to share an idea, a copywriter can help you.
And also, a good copywriter makes sure that it's measurable, right?
Yes. Depending on your goals. I mean, if your goals are nebulous, it's my duty to give you something a little bit more realistic that can be measured. But definitely, we want a good copywriter makes things measurable. Like I said, it is easier in digital media because that is inbuilt. Metrics are there. You can measure how many people opened my email, how many people visited my landing page,
right,
how many people clicked buy in my shopping cart. That is easily measured. Yes.
Final question, Amadeus. Mm-hmm. What books would you recommend budding entrepreneurs to read in order to improve themselves in marketing and in sales?
Thank you. I love this. I love books. I read a lot of books. I cannot live without books. Thomas Jefferson. Yes. Okay, so the 3 books that I wish I had read 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, heck, 20 years ago. My 3 favorites are, I think you want to start with something on basic sales. So I like Frank Bettinger's How to Raise Yourself from Failure to Success in Sales. That's a classic. Okay. It literally will take you through developing your sales skill from zero to master. It's a really good book. It's written in a very down-to-earth, accessible style, and you know it's old, but it's true, and you can't go wrong reading that particular book. The next book, if you just want to understand a little bit of copywriting, and I encourage serious entrepreneurs, and even just people who are professionals who want to improve how they write, because copywriting isn't just about selling things to people. It's about sharing ideas. It's about persuasion. It's about communicating to persuade. Persuasive communication. So to become a better written persuasive communicator, I would suggest you read the Adweek Copywriting Handbook by Joe Sugarman. It's the 2nd edition of that particular book. It takes you through the structure of persuasive communication, but it also provides you with a lot of these psychological triggers and hacks you can use to make your communication more impactful and powerful. Okay, nice. The third thing, and this is not a business psychology book. It's a psychology book focused on copywriters or copywriting. But I think even if you feel like you don't need to be a persuasive communicator in writing, this will help you not just understand and communicate better with your customers, but also with your fellow employees and your managers, and wherever you find yourself. And this is called Cashvertising. So Cashvertising it takes the psychological principles and ideas in the Adweek Copywriting Handbook a step further. It drills deep down into what drives people. What drives human beings fundamentally, The two most fundamental emotions are always the fear of loss and the desire for gain. And everything else builds up around that. But he builds up an entire framework around those two emotions, those primal motivators, those instinctual drives, and then breaks them down into different categories of, what matters to people? What drives people? What will motivate people to take action? And then he gives you clear steps and clear ideas of how you can apply psychological triggers, motivation, and concepts in order to persuade and communicate better based on all of these driving forces.
Perfect. Amadeus, thank you so much for giving us your time and insights, and hopefully we'll have you again on the show soon.
Thank you. I'd love to be back. All the best.
Cheers.
Cheers. Hi, I'm Amadeus Musumali. This is Business Indaba. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel down below.